Welcome to GPS Your Health, where we help you navigate our ever-changing healthcare system. I'm Robin Denton, your host. If you've ever felt lost in the medical system, overwhelmed by options, or unheard by the very people meant to help you, you are not alone. Here, we believe that God cares deeply about your health and your purpose. The enemy may be trying to keep you stuck in sickness, but there is hope. When you invite God into your healing journey, He will give you wisdom, direction, and He'll bring the right people that you need at just the right time because He is the great physician. As you listen, I ask that you keep an open mind. Healing doesn't always look the way we expect. It didn't for me. And many are finding true, lasting wellness through holistic approaches that care for the body, mind, and spirit. Remember, what the sun sets free is free indeed. Oh, and one more thing, be sure to grab your free copy of 7 Qualities to Look For in a Doctor to help you get started in the right direction. The link is below, and let's get started. Hi there, welcome back to GPS Your Health. I'm Robin Denton, and I am here with Dr. Jana Bunsic here in Morristown. She is an osteopathic doctor who also does functional medicine, and she has a ton of tools in her toolkit. Welcome back, Dr. Jana.
Thank you so much, Robin. Great to be here.
Sure. We talked last time about GLP-1 medications and their side effects and when it might be appropriate to use them and when it might be appropriate to choose a more natural path of just nutrition and diet. And we're going to continue that conversation today. And Dr. Jana's got a program at her office. It's a nutritional program, and it's a unique program because it includes detoxing, it includes getting the right diet and nutrition on board. It includes supplements, but then she's also kind of got a little secret weapon in her back pocket called the M Sculpt machine. That's right, and that can really help you make your tipping point a little easier because sometimes we can struggle just to get things going in the right direction. I know you ladies know what I mean. And so we're going to talk about that as well and how she incorporates that into her program. So let's get started. Jana, let's start. If I come into your office, first of all, and I want to I want to get on this program. Talk to me. What is that? What's that going to look like first? What do we need to do first?
Yeah, so there's really kind of two ways we approach it. So if you're somebody who, really feels like, you've kind of done a lot of things already, and you're like you feel like your hormones are pretty balanced, you've already just done a lot of work, which is pretty rare, right? Pretty rare. Then what we can do is we can just skip the initial consultation and go straight into just like an abbreviated program consultation that's included in the program, just like a 15-minute consult where we just kind of say, okay, run down what you're doing. These are the couple things that you're missing and kind of fast track you into the program. But what happens most of the time is that people need a little bit more, right? So the majority of
Yes.
people are not there. Or they may think that they're there, and then I'm like, well, maybe we just consider doing a full consultation. So we schedule a new patient consult, and you can do that if you have another primary care doctor. So one of the things about functional medicine that we've been trying to kind of help people understand is, you can have a functional medicine doctor as your more like primary care doctor, but oftentimes we're really kind of more like specialists that aren't specialists, right? Because it's like it's a specialty, but yet it's really kind of more is a more in-depth primary care. So it is kind of one of those things in the healthcare space that's kind of getting defined right now. But for instance, my electronic health record, OptiMantra, they are like, they have people sign up for them, like, know that we're not going to be doing like all your screening mammograms and pap smears and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to keep a primary care doctor now, I personally do some of those things for people if they want that. But in general, I'm really more focused on just really creating more true wellness versus like preventative screening tests, right? So that's my focus. We go through, what is your diet looking like? What are your lifestyle factors? What are your goals, right? Because really people have different kinds of goals. And to help in like goal assessment, we just recently are launching the InBody machine as part of our programs. This is something brand new that we're doing, and we're including with the highest level programs that include the MSculpt Neo, where you can actually get an analysis by a state-of-the-art machine that's used by all the top centers, all the top universities, sports programs, for instance, even into the major league sports. This is considered like the top of the line. And what it does is it gives you like a full biometric assessment. So one of the things that we're, understanding now is like, okay, overall, we can say this is the average thing that happens with patients. But as we know, a lot of people are outliers, right? When you take an average, it doesn't mean it's really like a median, right? Like, so that's really not like your most often found number, but some people have this dramatic success and some people are slow like snails, right? And,
Yes.
you hate being the snail, but that happens. And especially as women, that tends to happen. And especially as we're going through that perimenopause and menopause, or maybe hormone fluctuations after pregnancies that just kind of never get right, that tends to be a big thing. So one of the things I do is kind of like, okay, let's sit down, let's look at all these things. And immediately we start working on the number one thing, right? Because whether you lose 5, 10, 20 pounds of belly fat or not, if you're not cellularly healthy, that's the biggest thing. Because we know the root cause of all disease is inflammation. And my biggest thing is, before you're happy with your weight, I want you to be healthy, right? And like health is my main thing. So, you could give or take those 10 or 20 pounds and still live to be 100, right? And that's what I want for you. But I also know, because I'm there myself, is that you want to have, really be in that ideal body weight because you do feel better, you have more energy, and of course, the way you look influences the way you feel. And that's kind of like a whole circle, right? So we kind of try to put all that in perspective and say, okay, what are the things that are foundational we need to do? So the first thing that I always kind of talk to people about is toxin load, right? So some people think, oh, maybe I've not really been exposed to toxins, but the truth of the matter is everybody's exposed to toxins because, girl, we live in a toxic world, right? Like there's
Yes.
so many things, from the pesticides we're spraying on our food to the hormones they're putting in there to the things leaching in our water, to the chemicals we've used thinking they were safe and have absorbed into our skin, including sunscreens all summer, right? All those things. And there's some surprising toxic loads. So we can get into some in-depth testing, but sometimes it's really hard to elucidate exactly what those toxins are. We do have some, advanced nutritional panels that if people are really concerned about some certain ones and want to know those things, we can do them. But overall, I'm like, okay, we all need to detox. So this is what we begin with, right? We begin with some powders, right? So I've got the organic moringa, we've got the beetroot, we got the spirulina, and then we've got the nopal powder. So we start with like increasing doses of these to improve your tolerance to little by little get toxins. Now, sometimes that's not that hard for people, but sometimes they're like, man, had diarrhea for like a week, and that happens, right? And what I explain to people is, the process of healing is not always like you go from where you're not good to instantly better. Sometimes there's a process of, some things get worse before they get better, right?
Yes.
In that healing process. And so that's an important thing to understand, because these are not medications that are covering up symptoms. These are things that are addressing root causes, right?
Yes. Pulling toxins out of your body.
Huge. And the
Yes.
liver is huge in that too, right? So toxins store in the fat. They also are active in the gut lining, causing inflammation and malabsorption, and then also in your liver. Okay. And then from there, from the liver, also can be in the bloodstream, of course, the organs. But the clean liver is a proprietary supplement that I've got. And that includes your N-acetylcysteine, your ALA, your selenium, a lot of important cofactors that almost everybody is deficient in with the liver, and especially people who've had a hard time losing losing weight. That's pretty much always a thing where things are getting stuck between the gut and the liver, and they're just not going anywhere. And then we talk a lot about hydration. So I'm excited to have this new tool to be able to like really give people a number, because people will go over the labs and they'll be like, I was just dehydrated that day. It's like, well, maybe you were dehydrated that day, but maybe you're actually chronically dehydrated, because I talk to people, it's kind of like a bank account where if you keep overdrawing, it's not like it resets the next day, right? Like you're overdrawn, you're overdrawn, you're overdrawn. You're not just $100 in debt from this week, you're $1,000 in debt for the last 10 weeks, right?
Right.
So it's more how it works. So kind of really getting people rehydrated, that's a huge key.
Mhm.
I've seen people who've done amazing on diet and exercise, and they're dehydrated and they just can't move the mark because of their hydration status. So
Okay.
that's a big thing we discuss. And then we discuss also foundational nutrition. So these programs are also located on my website, so
Mhm.
on lifechangingdoc.com, because I do believe, in this fundamentally, right? And I believe that this is something
Yes.
that pretty much everybody actually needs, right? So whether you're doing the advanced program or you're just like trying to get healthier, like this is the foundation, right? So you do the detoxification, that's one program, but then also we just have like your overall health, right? So we've got, our multivitamin that's methylated and it's got all these wonderful cofactors, and it's, small batch made, it's very quality controlled. The company that I use, they're analyzing every single batch and testing it. So, some people are like, well, vitamins aren't safe because they're not controlled by the FDA. That's a typical your primary care doctor response, or like, a specialist will be like, don't take any supplements because they're not safe, right? So the problem is a lot of times they're just testing things off the shelf in the drugstore, and a lot of times those things are not regulated, and that's not untrue. But that's where you've got to go with the quality, and you got to go with somebody reliable who you can trust, who is directly watching over those things, right? So that's
Yes. Supplements are not all the same. And what you buy down at the corner store is not what you're going to get from Dr. Jana. Dr. Jana's got really great quality supplements. And I love that she makes her own supplements because that's something she's been passionate about since she was a little girl. And she really studies what combinations of things that need to go together so that you buy as few supplements as you can. So you're not just buying, this vitamin and that vitamin and that vitamin. And the other thing that I want to point out is that also, and you can help me tell me where I got this information probably, but they will have a label of how much like vitamin D you need. And um, it's usually they usually way undercut it. Like we usually need a lot more than what the suggested or the recommended amount
yeah.
is. Is that correct? I feel
That is
like
correct. And even in my labeling, for instance, unfortunately, this is something that is regulated by the FDA
Mhm.
incorrectly, is that
Yes,
they force us to put on any nutritional supplement whatever they decide is a generic dosing. So what I always tell people is like, you got to go by the dosing that I give you, right? So that's another key component of where if you don't have somebody who's a functional medicine nutritional specialist working with you, you're just looking at labels, even of a good product, right? And you don't actually know how much you need for your health status, because that varies, right? It can
right.
it can, it can vary quite a bit. So too much or too little is not a good thing. I always tell people we're much more Goldilocks than we think we are. We're really all a bunch of Goldilockses walking
Yeah,
around, and it has to be just right,
that's
and
right.
just right for you.
And the other thing I want to ask you about as we're talking is about the detoxing, because a lot of people think a detox, oh no, I'm going to be at home, I'm going to be in the bathroom, I'm not going to be able to leave my house.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the detox. What is that? I mean, we may have to be a little uncomfortable for a
Mhm.
short time
Yeah.
because what if we've put bad things in, the bad things need to come out. And but what is that going to kind of look like as far as um planning, people planning to do a detox?
That is a great question. I love that. So it really varies greatly on the person. So, just like I said, everyone's a little bit different. So what I tell people is it could go great for you and it's like not really an issue, just kind of starts to regulate your system and, maybe go to the bathroom a few extra times. But like, I'll give you a couple examples recently in my office. So I recently had somebody, they said, yeah, maybe for a couple days it took them a little bit to get used to. Their stomach felt a little funny, but then after that they did great, right? So, but they didn't have any, diarrhea or any problems, right? Then I took somebody else. Now she is in her, I think, mid to late 60s, admittedly had had poor diet for decades, and knew she had a lot of toxicity, knew her gut health was really terrible. So she called my office, kind of, I think it's around, it had been almost a week. And she was
Mhm.
like, I almost can't leave the house, like it, it's terrible, and I'm just like, well, if you want to cut back just a little bit, she's like, we already did that. I was like, so this is just that your body needs this, right? So she was preparing to go on a trip out of the country.
Mhm.
And, we had about 2 weeks before she was going to travel. And I was like, I really feel like you need to stick with it, kid, and if it's a couple days before the trip and it's still like this, okay. But I think it's just your body responding, because you had just so much toxicity.
Mhm.
And so sure enough, I saw her, right about at that 2 week mark for her follow-up visit with me. And she had the biggest smile on her face. And she's like, people need to know about this, and so I was like, are you willing
Yeah.
to give me a testimonial? Because I need to start doing these. And you're the perfect person,
Yes.
right? Because like you almost gave up, right? And she's like, no, she's like, I can't even tell you how much better I feel. I didn't even understand 2 weeks ago how bad I felt. And we've not even like done all the things. And I already feel like a different person, right? So it's like it can really vary, and other people it's just like, yeah, I can notice it. And it's just, so it really depends, hugely on the person and how much toxicity they have and, all these different factors. And she was also ready. She was ready to, this is also a mind, body, spirit thing where like, I always tell people I meet you where you're at, because you're at a different place and your life and your health and all the things, right?
Yeah.
Emotions and life situations and lifestyles. And so wherever you're at, is a good place to start. And so you can soft start, you can fast start, but you got to start, right? And then we can assess, what is the way, what's the path. Because we just have to sometimes just go with our own flow. That I think that's a big part of the journey. What is your flow, right? And let's get you back into your personal flow.
Well, and if you are really inflamed and you really have a toxic overload, I imagine your body is really trying to get those toxins out. So when you give it a little help, it's probably like, yes, I'm taking advantage of this.
Yes.
Let's go.
Yes. Yes.
So, but lots of high reward, high payoff
High reward,
afterwards.
high reward. Yes. And I always also partner it with, and this is a big mistake a lot of people make, is I always partner it with my rainbow keto diet or some this is my baseline diet, but of course, as a physician nutritionist, will do tweaks for different people with different health situations or different needs. But basically it's a very vegetable forward, but otherwise low carbohydrate diet. It's an intermittent ketosis because we do want to burn the fat, but we don't want to like traumatize the cells or create more inflammatory markers by doing too much saturated fat. So we incorporate a lot of the plant forward, but also high protein. We kind of analyze how much protein you really need, because maintaining your lean muscle mass is super important, but we also want to get a lot of antioxidants on board, and we want to get some of those good healing fats. So I was just kind of showing you at the end, the fish oil. There's a couple other things. So we really want to get that foundational nutrition. And like if you're just kind of like, taking some detox pills or doing some program you bought online and not really getting serious with a clean eating diet, I mean, it's not even a real thing, right? Like diet's always primary, right? So I tell people before you buy one nutritional supplement from me, I don't care. Like you've got to fix your diet. So, I had somebody coming in the other, actually just today, and she's like, well, I'm not really fully in it with the diet. I was like, stop. let's stop right here. Okay. We're not going to talk about anything else that you need supplement wise. Let's get to the nitty gritty of why you're not doing it and what are you actually eating and what we need to do to fix that. So I do like in-depth things. And sometimes I recommend for patients, if you have time beforehand, keep a food journal so I can, give you some specific directions, and help you kind of program that. But the diet, then you've got the detox, the
Mhm.
foundational health supplements, and then the next thing we add on is the gut health.
Yes.
So you
Tell
may
us
have some
about that.
questions about that. Mhm.
Yes. Tell it, go ahead and tell us, did you talk about the supplements for the gut health?
Not yet. Yeah.
Okay.
So the nopal fiber is part of that. And that's
Mhm.
been tested in multiple studies to show that that improves insulin resistance also. We have a lot of people coming in that are diabetic, pre-diabetic. Pre-diabetes is one of just the biggest pandemics. And I mean, probably in America, I mean, I can't even quote you a number, but it's humongous of how many
Yes.
people are walking around. I want to say most people who come in kind of knowing they've got some health issues but haven't been tested in a little while are pre-diabetic. And sadly, a lot of times people are getting their blood work done annually at their regular doctor, and all they get is a phone call saying everything's normal, right? I'll tell you, never one day in my professional career have I ever done that, because before I even swung all the way into full functional medicine, that's just not good medicine, right? Because you came and you did those labs for a reason. You had questions. I had questions. We were hoping the labs would answer them. If all you're getting is a phone call and that's it, have a nice day, no questions are answered. And that was basically worthless, right? So for the most part, and then if something does happen to be wrong and they tell you, well, you're an anxious mess, right? And probably the stress that's created from that is, just awful. And that's what gets you into the chat GPT, everybody's got cancers, are going to die, like, and that's a stressful life event. So you're basically, micro traumaing yourself, maybe even macro to,
Yeah.
from, these results. So we always, I tell people, I'm like, I don't even, our goal is, I don't even really get into anything before we sit down because we're collaborating, So I always say, I'm the wise counselor to the king. You're the king of your castle. This is your living temple. I'm your advisor, right? I'm not
I
your
I love
boss.
that. Yeah, I love that. So many people just get that call. Everything looks fine. They hang up, and it's the nurse calls, everything's fine. They hang up. And I know from my own experience talking to people that normally they try to just accept it as normal, or they will go to another doctor and have another test ran, and it just can cycle until you have so many doctors.
Yep. Oh, I've seen some people. I've had people, getting into the dozens of doctors, and it's really funny because I had one patient and she ended up moving to North Carolina, and she lived in my old neighborhood, and she had this atypical facial pain that I helped her with, but she had literally gone to Mayo Clinic. She'd been to, I think, Texas somewhere, multiple different, and all the dozens of specialists, been on all these different drugs that ended up making it worse. And it turned out I lived in her neighborhood right around the corner. And she came to see me. And between doing all of the functional medicine, healing stuff cellularly, and then doing some osteopathic treatments, she got, 90% better and was off of all of the medication. And she's like, you lived in my neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was just kind of one of those things, but it's hard to believe because like we have been so mindset molded to believe that, and from doctors and patients alike, that it's, there's a symptom, there's a one answer to that, and then there's a drug or there's a surgery that fixes that. And that couldn't be more wrong, right? Couldn't
Wrong
be more
people.
wrong. It's
Wrong.
just complete fallacy. It's complete
Yeah.
upside down. It's like,
Yeah.
just, it's like a journey. There's all of these things, just like, you walk out into the forest, right? There's trees, there's birds, it's all a blend of things happening together. And it's that synthesis and that synergy. And so it takes a lot of skill, right? And then some people, they're just, there's some practitioners out there like, oh, I've heard of functional medicine. They take a class and then they're like, oh, I'm doing functional medicine. So it's like, but there's a lot of things that you've got to really blend together to be able to bring the healing forces back to the body. And there's a lot of artistry to that. So it's really that science meets artistry and meets also, humble servitude. I want to just humbly do what you need. I'm not trying to fit you into my box, right? We both got outside the box, baby. We're both
Yeah.
outside there,
Yeah.
and we're doing what you need. So speaking of the gut health, right? We
Yeah.
talked about the clean liver. We talked about the nopal. I do this glutamine restore. This is a product that helps your gut to heal the leaky gut junctions, right? So people hear about leaky gut, but nobody knows what leaky gut is. Leaky gut is where the gap junctions of the mucous membranes, what happens is as they're traumatized by the toxins, they should be nice and tight like this, and then they're moving like this in the peristalsis. And what happens is they kind of slowly start to weaken. And then what happens is things are seeping through. What happens as a result of that? Prostate problems for men, chronic UTIs, and vaginal and pelvic floor issues for women. Okay. And we think, oh, it's just the hormones. Well, a lot of times it's the gut where you've got that toxin that's slow seeping down into that peritoneum, causing all that inflammation. And that's why you get that abdominal bloating that's so bad. So this is a great product for that. At the same time, since the peristalsis is also impaired, right? We do a plant-based digestive enzyme. Now, some people need a little bit more if you don't have a gallbladder. I've got another product that we do to help with the bile salts because those are missing. And people need to know if you don't have a gallbladder, you need to be on a gut healing regimen that's very in-depth because your whole system has been kind of torn apart. Your poor gallbladder, whether it was or was not the culprit, was part of a problem, right? That never got addressed, right? So there's more awareness coming to that. I had somebody who said they went to it was a specialty center, maybe it was Cleveland Clinic, and they told them to actually start taking some bile salt acids. I was like, thank you, Jesus, that they're finally somebody's a
Yeah.
record. It's just really basic science,
Yeah.
and then
Well, and even
magnesium.
even if you're not a scientist, if God put it in your body, you need it.
It's
And
basic reasoning.
I don't have a gallbladder, so I understand this concept well, and I love the way you were painting a picture of like the forest and the birds and all the things because we have a little ecosystem in our gut that can get out of balance, and we need our gallbladder. So we definitely those bile salts make a big difference.
They do. They
Huge
do. So we
difference.
have a product like that. If people need that, we add that on. But I love what you said about, the ecosystem. The funny thing is, I started out as an ecologist and biologist and worked in the rainforest, worked in the coral reef in my undergraduate, and God led me into, natural healing. And then of course I did my osteopathic and, became double board certified. But that's my route, right? So when people are like, when did you become aware of this stuff? I'm like, I wasn't probably born, but like, probably by 12, like
Real early on.
yeah, this was my path where I was like sitting in the store, the vitamin store, that was down the road I could walk to and like sit and read the books on the floor, and they're probably like, what is she doing, and trying they used to give samples back in those days,
Yeah.
try this vitamin C, try this, So I'd go and I'd be trying all the things, but one of the things that we have really learned in nutritional medicine over the years is about probiotics, and there's so much advertising about probiotics. It's very, very important that you get something. And I'd love to say that some of these bigger companies, if you're going to see it on TV, okay, they've probably spent more money on advertising than they've spent on the product itself, right? So it's an expensive product, but we produce it at over 100 billion. So by the time it is batch tested, each pill is over 100 billion. So that by the time you get it, which is only just a matter of weeks, because we do small batches, and so we're ordering this product fresh every 1 to 2 weeks at our office and on our online store. It's our biggest seller because got the 12 strains and the 50 billion. So I used to argue with this local gastroenterologist many years ago, when I was trying to explain to some people early on in East Tennessee that just didn't really know a lot about nutritional medicine. And he and I would argue, he's a gastroenterologist. I'm a functional medicine physician nutritionist. We'd argue about if probiotics worked, right? So he'd be like, no, you can give some of these natural extracts and that you can do that, but probiotics don't work. And his rationale was always because we have trillions of bacteria and it would take too much to move that mark. So I said, well, that's not wrong. But that's why I incorporated from the very beginning a probiotic that has billions of bacteria. That's only one, number. And as you know, bacteria replicate rapidly in a good environment. So it doesn't take long when you're giving 50, 100 million, which is actually a billion, right? Into the gut that you are actually starting to really shift the flora right away. So it is very disturbing, and you're not wrong at all, Robin. And I'm glad you brought that up about some of the consumer studies. Some of these consumer advocacy groups have gone, and I love this, and done independent testing on a lot of the products. And you're seeing sometime as little as 10% of what they're advertising. Usually they're landing between 10 and 50%, almost none of them, which is why, knowing that that is what can happen, we do the small batches, and we actually started at a double dose so that we can guarantee it, like at the time you're receiving it, that it is in fact what it is saying, if not more. So
And I have read that people who are obese and who have a lot of health issues and inflammation, they don't have they don't have a lot of variety of good bacteria in their gut. So they've got they've got to get some good bacteria back in their gut because we take so many antibiotics. I don't, but a lot of people do take a lot of antibiotics that just wipe out all the bacteria, good and bad.
yes.
So,
And this is where we also get into the issues that a lot of people are talking about today with parasites, right? So
mhm,
one of the big, things that I would like to inform people about who watch this podcast is when you have an issue with parasites, which is a real thing, right? But it comes from the bottom line being that this ecosystem is out of balance, right?
mhm,
Parasites can't invade a healthy ecosystem. I mean, maybe a little bit, or if you like eat something really bad and it just kind of throws you off. I'm not saying it's impossible, but the bottom line is people who just feel like, you see pictures of people just chronically passing these terrible parasites, people who are on ivermectin for months and years at a time, and febendazole and all these things. And there are protocols that I agree with for that. But what I'm seeing a lot in this space is people over self-dosing with that. And
mhm,
really what they're doing is they're just doing their own allopathic medicine. They're just,
mhm.
instead of getting to the true root, they're just getting one more level below, and that's better, but it's still not getting to the full root cause, which is we got to actually get the gut healthy. So sometimes we do need to do parasite cleanses, and you can do them with ivermectin, and I prefer mebendazole to febendazole because of the fact that it can be compounded in a human pharmacy, that is, FDA regulated, and that there can, there's some issues
Yeah.
there sometimes. So I want to always get it from a safe source, but we can do that, but like in its proper place. And the biggest thing is that you're creating that healthy environment, right? And you're reseeding. And I try to explain to people, it's kind of like if you had a fallow field and you're trying to plant a garden in there, you've got kudzu, you got, all the gnarly weeds growing. It's not just enough to dig up all those weeds, right? You've then got to plant something really quickly, right? Or they grow back like this, right? So this is the same concept of what we're doing in the gut and why that's so important.
Okay, that makes so much sense. So get rid of the toxins, and then we've got to create a home, a little ecosystem in there that is healthy and that is not conducive to hosting parasites. So we've got to
You got
stop,
it. You
we've got
got it.
to get rid of the little home that we've created for parasites.
Exactly, exactly. And so also, magnesium is very important. So I have a super bioabsorbable magnesium. A lot of people, are taking magnesium nowadays, but really realizing the issues that are there with that and the different forms and how you could be taking a lot and maybe not absorbing it. And that gets back to that quality. And also, are you using a supplement line that's really more what I call nutraceutical grade? So nutraceutical is a term I'd really like to get launched more into the public space, for some understanding so that people can understand that some supplements are just, okay, maybe that's supporting health a little bit, but a
Mhm.
nutraceutical is really real medicine. So real medicine is like, okay, everything is really caused by underlying dysfunction in the body, a lot of what is nutritional deficiency. And so how are we then taking that and giving the appropriate quantity, which sometimes is very far beyond what the FDA or the RDA, sorry, is for that specific vitamin, that you're going to read on a label, but that is a bioavailable form. And then what is the timing and the potency of that? And that's kind of getting all into like that more actual nutritional medicine, which is what I do.
Okay, so we've detoxed, we've gotten some probiotics, we've gotten some good gut support on board. Is that basically like all the supplements that you would recommend, or is there
I
more?
I had kind of just briefly kind of touched on in the
Okay.
interim, some of the foundational health. So fish oil, the good multi. I also always make sure people's vitamin D is monitored. And so some people have been monitoring that and are good.
Mhm,
If not, I at least start them on a baseline of vitamin D off the
mhm.
get-go. And then we monitor those levels because it's very important to optimize your vitamin D for whatever you're doing in life, right? Like I
Okay.
always tell people, I was like, if I do nothing else good for you, if I teach you about vitamin D and we get you, balance in that. I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
about cancer prevention. We're talking, about, different heart issues, inflammatory problems. I mean, hormonal imbalances, so many things that we find that vitamin D does. So that's of critical importance. So I always, make sure that that's being monitored as well. So that's kind of the baseline. And then, like I said, if hormones are an issue or maybe possible some subclinical hypothyroidism, people who are like a lot, so many people are starting to question now, which I love. Thank you, Lord, that people are questioning. And so what I have really done and the Lord's led me to do is create a space for the people who are questioning but now have learned enough that they've realized the value of partnering with somebody like myself that's like, okay, I've dabbled in all these things, but like the truth is, Chat GPT can't give me enough information. This,
Right.
watching these podcasts can't give me enough
Yeah.
information. I know that I got to take it to the next level, and maybe the next level is you just get on the website and you want to start the detox, if you're remote, and then but I also do telehealth too.
Mhm.
Now they can't do the next level of the program, which is what we're about to talk about next with the advanced fat burning. But I can still advise for some things and do some other things. Another thing that sometimes happens is if you're really nutritionally depleted, we also do the nutritional IVs. So
Mhm.
also,
Nice.
this is different than your drip bar IVs, right? So anybody can just kind of walk in, almost anybody. Some of my patients were trying to do that when they were headed out of town the other day at a place that was a little more convenient for them, and they got turned away because they were too old, right? They were like, "You're too old to get," and I was like, "Wow, that was very ageist," but
Yeah.
but
You're too old to get vitamins.
you're too old to get IV or injectable vitamins. So we do monitor those things. I do feel like that was good that they did that though, because I get very concerned with some of those drip bars are not monitoring any levels. There's not the type of clinical oversight. There's not the type of in-depth training, so that can be a problem. But what I do is if we do have some more more serious nutritional issues, we can do the IVs. Also, sometimes people just have a lot of cellular fatigue. So
Mhm.
if they have cellular fatigue and they're cardiovascularly cleared, which is also an important thing, we make it consider doing NAD. If they have some, and that's an injectable thing that we can
Mhm.
do, or we can do an IV drip if it's really bad. Or we also do glutathione injections, or just B injections. So if your Bs are really low, you're not going to be able to burn, fat properly, and your metabolism is going to be sluggish. So we get you on some B boosting shots, which
Yeah.
that kind of helps everybody a little bit. So what we've
Yeah.
done is in our M-Sculpt program, we've actually included now three complementary, included multi-B methylated vitamins. Also, this blend has some choline and some other cofactors that actually help you burn and metabolize fat a little bit more. So we
Yes.
do that, yeah, as well.
Okay. So let me give a drum roll. The M Sculpt. Tell us about the M Sculpt machine because this is something unique that Dr. Jana has. Most people do not have access to this machine. And um, tell us about what the M Sculpt is. And
So it is a combination of two things. It is a radio frequency with a high FEM, which is a high potency magnet. Okay, so this magnetic energy, they have done. So they've got this company, which is BTL. They've got they're a multi-billion dollar company at this point. Over the last 20 years, they have just exploded with all this technology. They also do other technology like Holter monitors and heart cath, things like that. So they're a medical grade company. So that's something that people have to understand, because there has been, it's like the old saying, often imitated, never duplicated, right? That we live in a time where there's like dupes of everything everywhere, right? And
everything. Hmm.
and so it's like there's people are aware of the fact that energy devices are something that they want to be looking at, right?
Hmm.
Unfortunately, people will think, okay, well, I'll buy my own this thing, or my massage therapist, has this little, paddle thing that they can put on, and it, stimulates the muscle, or it's just an e-stim machine. This is not what we're talking about, right? This
Hmm.
is actually an FDA approved, with multiple studies, the only one that has both fat burning and muscle building. Okay. Why is that important, right? The fact that it has these two technologies combined, it's the only thing that does that. That is exactly what you need for a healthy metabolism, right? Not to mention looking better in your genes, right? Like, but
Yeah, that's a part.
which is a perk, right?
That's a
But
part.
for healthy metabolism, you've got to have muscle, right? Muscle is what defines your basal metabolic rate. Okay. So when you don't have sufficient muscle, which is the big problem we talked about a little bit last time with the GLP-1s, it's a big problem where you're losing both muscle and fat, right? So the fat loss is great, right? But then there's the muscle loss plus the toxicity that you're getting from that GLP-1. Usually there's some toxic byproducts there, and then the different metabolic factors where you're in this constant ketosis, and it's producing your own toxins from not improper detoxification while you're losing all the stuff. So what we do is this machine has been studied, and what it's shown in multiple analysis is that within a minimum of 4 sessions, I'm sorry, within 4 sessions, because sometimes we actually do more than that, but in the 4 session study they did, which was the first several that they did, 30 minutes times 4 weekly sessions, you saw a 25% increase in the muscle mass that you're treating, which in this particular case, we're doing the core. Now, for some people who are very pear-shaped, we do the glutes or the quads. Okay.
Okay.
Because if you're very pear-shaped and you're actually, which is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about our new InBody machine that we have, because we'll be able to actually like statistically analyze that person per se and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, maybe we do 8 sessions, but we do 4 on your gut, and we do 4 on your side, lumps
Hmm.
there.
Mhm.
on the lateral aspect and the middle part of your legs or your glutes. So that's a great thing that we can do. So we do that analysis. We're going to say, okay, this is what we think that you need in terms of number of sessions or some different programs, depending on where you're at. And I will tell you this, I go a little bit off label, which, the machine manufacturer will not, certify. But when
Mhm.
I did an event, I'm doing another event tomorrow, and I'm going to start doing events more often in the
Mhm.
summer, where people can come and demo the machine too, that are local, which is really fun. I love doing that. So,
Yes.
but what you can see is it's hyper contracting the muscle, okay, which has a lot of different benefits. One is therapeutic, in fact, where sometimes when you've had that stretch, right, where especially look at the abdomen, the abdominal obesity, any woman that's had a baby knows, right, that you stretch everything out and it
Mhm.
never quite comes back together the way that it was, right?
True story.
Yes. And so you have those stretch receptors. So when you stretch out those muscles, pieces of the muscle will actually shut down. And when no matter what you do for exercise, it doesn't actually re-stimulate that. Now, doing some just like gentle e-stim can help if it's like just some points. But really, what you have to do is you have to repolarize the muscle, and that is done with the magnet because just an electrical stimulation doesn't repolarize, right? You have to have a high power magnet. So this is the type of magnet like you have in an MRI. So if you have like the contraindications, or you can't do it if you have a pacemaker, you can't do it if you have like metal in that area. Like, so if you have, free metal in your abdomen, if you had, remnants of some kind of trauma, you couldn't do
Mhm.
it. But
Mhm.
most people do because, they don't have any metal in their actual abdomen. It's fine if you have something in the spine because it doesn't penetrate all the way down to the spine when you do it on the abdomen. So yeah, so it does this hyper contraction, and then it's also emanating a certain form of heat and energy therapy that metabolizes the fat in the body. And then it actually has like a setting where it's kind of like moving your lymphatic system. So it's
Mhm.
actually then kind of like taking what it's burned up and it's like mobilizing it back into
Nice.
the body so that you can actually get that out, which is another reason why it's so important that you do it together with the rest of the program, right?
Mhm.
Because people who just go and say, initially it was done by some medi spa type places, and they're just like, okay, just slap somebody on the machine, tell them to drink some water, and you'll have abs, and that's not what we're doing, right? We're
Yeah.
really shifting things into the wellness. I want you detoxifying. I want your gut healthy. Then I want all of that coming off because one of the things is important for people to understand, who are kind of like on the fence of like, would I want to spend that much more money on weight loss, when I can just do a GLP-1 or I might just stick it out and just keep trying to do the same old, or tweak a couple more things in my diet,
Mhm.
is that as you get older, your fat kind of acts more like a tumor. Okay. So it has its own metabolism, it has its own hormones that it's secreting, and we have to break that cycle. So we, one, have to get the muscle rebooted. So it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, and it's giving you the strength as well as the metabolic influence to start burning your own fat consistently. And then we have to burn that fat and start triggering things into the catabolism, right? So your body's either doing anabolism, which means that it's building fat all the time or wants to, right? And you're fighting that, or the catabolism, which is where you're actually breaking down fat. And that's why we're doing all these things together to take that impulse that's that magnet and that frequency and that fat burning and
Mhm.
get your body actually started on a whole new cycle, which then allows you to do more at the gym. You have more energy. Maybe if you get a little back tweaks, it helps support your spine. So it's got so many benefits to doing it that way versus just I'm just going to diet and then try to exercise the best I can. So I basically tell people it's not a replacement for doing the right things. That's how
No.
it was initially marketed in some of these aesthetic settings. But even the company itself has said, we're not even doing that anymore. We're all about functional medicine because they've realized that that's not really, going to help people long term, and they're not going to sell their product long term if
Right.
it's something that's just aesthetic, right? So they're realizing all these things, and so I'm one of the forefronts of really trying to explain explain to them like, and they're seeing that. So the whole company, actually, this billion-dollar company, I just came back from a weekend trip, and they're like, I'm like, I've been saying the stuff that you're now saying from the beginning for 3 years now, where you guys were just like, oh, it's just about looking sexy in your bikini. And I'm like, that's the byproduct of wellness, right? When
Right.
you look sexy in your bikini because you are actually healthy, right? And we got to get rid of this fat tumor. We got to shift everything. We got to take that pendulum that's been over here with gain, 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 and shift it over here to lose. Right. And it's the body fat percentage. So sometimes it may not even be the scale moving so much, because
Hmm.
remember, your body muscle weighs 3 times more than your fat, right?
Hmm.
So if you gain that muscle, and then that is burning calories, that muscle in your body is a fat burning machine you get to keep, right? And you get to keep
Yeah.
using. And
Yeah.
that's what changes things long term. And that's what shifts your longevity and shifts your inflammation and shifts your health back.
Yeah.
So, if you're stuck over here, it's not going to just happen because you make a couple little changes. You got to do some things that are more radical. It's just the
Yeah.
way it
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you explaining it like that because I do think people they go for well, I think it's advertised to them as like a shortcut.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't shortcut your health.
Nope.
You can't what is it they say you can't out supplement your fort. Like
Mm-mm.
um when you're getting these alerts from your body that things are going wrong, then you really have to get to the root cause. You can't just put a band-aid on it. You can't just losing weight on its own is not the goal. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we want you to feel well, to be healthy, to be there running around with grandkids
Yep.
and not missing out on all the important things for your family because your family needs you. So we, I love that you're really, I mean, you always have been really focused on getting people well. And I love that. And I also love just a little side note when I've been to see Dr. Jana, like, if you have something spiritual off, she will pray over you about that. And her dog Luke will come hold your hand if he needs to. So it's a very uplifting environment at your office, which I love. Um, so, so detox, just to recap. So we want to, first of all, get rid of offenders by cleaning up our diet and water and all those things. We want to detox the toxins that are in there. And then we want to supplement, build back a good ecosystem in our gut so that unhealthy things can't live there. And then we can use the M sculpt to kind of tip the scale. And I don't mean the scale that weighs us. I mean to give us a easier turning point to shift things because 25% is a lot.
Yes.
So
Yep.
that's going to tip the scale for people
Yes.
and make things a lot. That's going to make it easier to stick to your diet.
Yep.
That's going to make it easier to work out.
Yep.
You're going to sleep better. All the things are going to shift.
Yes.
Um,
And Robin, I
okay.
forgot one quick point that
Yeah.
so with the fat burning, in the 4 sessions,
Mhm.
whatever area you're treating, so mostly the abdomen, you actually lose 30% of your body fat there. So you're in that is actually a good portion visceral fat
Mhm.
also. So that's your deep toxic fat. So that they've done the fat studies, before and
Mhm.
after. And like I said, we're going to be able to measure that soon with the in-body, how that fat, that muscle is being built and that fat is being burned. So that's a pretty amazing combination. A couple other quick things that it does is that diastasis recti, where those muscles separate. You get a 20% improvement in bringing
Mhm.
those muscles back together, and
Nice.
also you get a 20% improvement in collagen and elastin generation. So
Mhm.
the magnets and the heat, the way they're formulated, actually stimulate your body's own collagen production. and it makes your body to produce 20% more collagen in that treatment area. And the
Nice.
other cool thing is this is not just a one and done thing. Like, okay, I did these 4 sessions. So like I said, we're recommending for most people 8 sessions now. You can do 6, but if we do the 8, we do 4 weeks, then we do a 4 week break, and then we do the other 4 weeks. And then when you do it that way, it's been shown you're actually going to continue burning
Mhm.
fat, given you're doing all the right things, right, for another 3 months. Okay. And they've done
Nice.
studies showing that. So it's like you're not just doing something that's a band-aid. You're not just doing
Yeah.
something that's a quick fix. It is, in fact, a game-changing shifter,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
when utilized properly, it's a incredibly invaluable tool to like completely shift the game over.
Yeah. I love that you have that available to people in our area. That's
Yes. So
huge.
exciting.
Yes. So you can tell us how we can reach you if somebody
Yes.
wants to make an appointment. What do they need to do to get on this program?
Yep. So you can do one of two things. So you can go to all one word abundancewellnesscenter.com, and you can click request appointment. And you can put, whatever details you have in there about what you're looking for. If you're like wanting to fast track into the program, we can do that and get you in a little faster. If you're wanting to, just kind of go through the whole process, we'll get you scheduled for a consult, and then we will get you set up for a demo with the machine. We'll go over all the rainbow keto, get you on all the good supplements, and go from there. And I forgot to mention too, the patient that had that miraculous thing, that was the testimonial. She said she could not imagine how much that was going to change her mental health. And I got to talk more about this, because it's like I know it, but like people don't know it. And I just have to tell them that, like, actually detoxing, because the toxins are interfering with your brain health, like biochemically, right? So it's not you need another chemical. And then as far as like that circulation, right? And that metabolism, when that is working, and then your gut health, and that produces your happy hormones and all the things. I mean, that is like a huge mental health thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is absolutely huge. So abundancewellnesscenter.com, or it's 423-318-8610 is our office phone number. We're here regularly Monday through Thursday, and we do some Fridays by appointment, or for special events. But yeah, those are the two main ways.
And
Um,
I'll
and
I'll have those for everybody in the comments, and
yes,
then also check out, join Dr. Jana on Facebook.
yes,
Follow her,
yes,
and that way you can find out when they're doing the demos for the
yes,
InSculpt, and you can get in on that, and
yes.
any other offers and promotions and things that she may be running.
I do lots of fun stuff on Facebook.
Yeah,
I mix it up with lots of different good health information. Sometimes I'll do some promo stuff. I also did
yeah,
want to mention it is linked at the bottom, the supplement store, but that's
yeah.
lifechangingdoc.com, all one word, where we sell all the supplements
Mhm.
online. And those actually come with a PDF you can download. So one of the things I was like envisioning launching into this space was like, okay, my products are different because you're actually kind of getting almost like a mini consult. Of course, it's not medical advice, right? But
Right.
specific, but I'm giving kind of my general wisdom as to how most people utilize these products, and my experience with that I automatically share with you on that PDF download, which is really invaluable. So
I
like,
love that. I
yeah,
love
if
that
something
so
you think
much.
is similar and it's $5 cheaper over here, it's very well worth, that wisdom that you're getting with that, and how to use that. And everything's kind of designed to synergistically work together. So it's crazy to me because sometimes people try to save $10 or $20 here or there. It's like if you're going to the hairdresser and the hairdresser said to you, you need this shampoo and conditioner, right? Because they're made to work together. You're gonna buy that shampoo and
That's
conditioner,
right.
right?
That's
Because you
right.
want your hair to look good.
That's
But
right.
then people don't do that for vitamins. That's like the
Mhm.
inside of you. That's so much more important, right? That it's
Yes.
made, because they're just not used to people with my skill level that are really kind of putting that together and like knowing that's even a thing, right? So it's a thing, and it's important that things work synergistically together because things can counteract or just be ineffective. And so I address all that in the PDFs for the different programs. So the gut health program, the detox program.
I love that. Well, I just want to, Jana, I want to thank you for being here. And I want to thank everybody for watching. And I will have all the links for you below. And check out Dr. Jana. She is so wise and she can help you get your health where it needs to be. So thank you
Thank you so
guys.
much, Robin. This has been so fun, and thank you so much for your heart for just wanting to share your wisdom that you've experienced, as a patient and as an advanced patient,
Yeah. I,
advisor, because you just have a lot of wisdom to share. God's given you a lot of insights in your journey, and thank you so much for sharing that with others. I appreciate you.
thank you. I appreciate you too. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me today on GPS Your Health. If this episode encouraged you, brought you clarity, or helped you just feel a little less alone on your journey, I invite you to share it with someone who may need the same hope. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with others. It helps this message reach more people who are searching for answers. You can also connect with me beyond the podcast by visiting my website and joining me on Facebook and Instagram for more encouragement, resources, and guidance on your healing journey. Remember, you don't have to navigate your health alone. God sees you, He cares about every detail, and He is guiding you toward healing, one step at a time. If you are ready for support in finding the right doctor or exploring the next step in your healing journey, be sure to connect with me and check out the resources in the show notes. Until next time, stay the course.